I was driving home from work one night, taking my usual route. It was around 12:15 a.m. because my shift had ended at midnight. My town is typically very quiet and boring, with lots of woods and not many houses or people. I was on a road not far from my house with a cornfield on one side and a patch of woods on the other. It was midsummer and about 75 degrees, so I had the top down on my convertible. As I was cruising down the street at about 50 miles per hour, I heard a loud, blood-curdling woman's scream. It was hard to tell which side of the road it came from. I slammed on my brakes, bringing the car to a quick halt so I could listen. I heard a woman crying for help from the left, in the woods. I got out of my car and grabbed the baton from the back seat. I walked toward the woods and yelled, "Who's out there?" The woman immediately cried back, "Please help me!" I started running into the woods, swatting away twigs and bushes as I went. I yelled out to the woman to keep screaming so I could find her. Every 10 seconds or so she'd scream, "Help!" and I'd head in that direction. Pretty soon though, I realized that no matter how far I ran into the woods, the woman's yells didn't seem to get any closer or louder. If anything, they were always the same distance away, even though I was booking it straight toward the screams. I screamed out, "Tell me where you are!" About 5 seconds later, the woman screamed, "Help!" again. I stopped in my tracks. I didn't like this at all. I started to feel like I was walking into some kind of trap. I turned around and started running back the way I came. I ran and ran until I could see the flashing headlights of my car through the trees on the side of the road. The whole way back, I still heard the woman's screams, but they were still the same distance away, no matter how close I got to my car, as if she were following me. Was I being stalked? I got into my car and just drove away completely freaked out. I called 911 to report it to the authorities in case they wanted to investigate. I wasn't sticking around though. I was tired of thinking about the strange encounter, so after telling a few friends and family, I was ready to move on. But a week later, I saw something on the news that made me sick to my stomach. The dead body of a woman in her 30s was found in the woods by a man hiking with his dog. Oddly, there were no signs of foul play. The location where the body was found was in the same general area where I had heard the screams. While that patch of woods is very big, I can't help but feel that's a huge coincidence. Here's another story. It was a complete coincidence. I was on my way from Brooklyn to Vermont, headed to my friend John's cabin for a weekend of snowboarding. At the time, I had two cars, a 2013 BMW 3 Series and a 2006 Ford F-150. That night, I was driving the F-150 with my snowboarding gear stowed in the truck bed. I was about 45 minutes from John's cabin. It was late, around 1 a.m., and the roads were completely black. It was snowing, and I was the only car on the road at that hour. Just a few weeks earlier, I'd gotten the truck back from the mechanic. I was always having problems with it, and this night was no exception. At what felt like the worst possible moment on a quiet and dark road, my engine suddenly started to completely overheat, with the needle jumping into the red zone. I slowed down and pulled over to the side, waiting for the engine to cool down. After a few minutes, I slowly got back on the road, but even at a low speed, the needle shot back up to the red, and the engine was overheating again. I had to pull over and shut off the truck. I went to try and diagnose the problem, but I couldn't in the dark and the snow. I tried to call John, but there was no reception from my T-Mobile phone. I couldn't even call for help. I felt totally screwed. I got back into the truck to at least wait in the warmth. It didn't seem to overheat while it was idling. I tried to drive one more time, but the same thing happened again. I decided I had to wait for another car to pass. It took about 10 minutes until I saw a car approaching. I had my hazards on, so I opened my door and waved my arms. The car, a small Toyota, stopped. The guy rolled down his window, and I thanked him for stopping and asked if I could use his phone. He asked what happened, and I told him my truck was overheating and was undrivable. He then asked if I was all alone. I paused for a second and said yes. He grabbed his cell phone and handed it to me. He must have been a local because he had reception. I called my friend John, and when he picked up, I asked him what I should do. He told me to call a specific towing company nearby and that he'd come to pick me up. I gave him my exact location, and he said he was on his way. After that, I called the towing company he gave me and requested assistance. The entire time I was on the phone, the guy in the car watched me. I tried not to look back at him. After my phone calls, I handed the man back his phone and thanked him. He said, "You're welcome." And without saying anything else, he rolled up his window and drove down the snowy road into the darkness ahead. I watched his taillights disappear as he descended below the top of the hilly road. I was once again alone. I got back into my idling truck to stay warm. I flicked the headlights off for a second, just to see how dark it was. When I say I couldn't see an inch outside the windows, I am not exaggerating. It was pure blackness. I sat there waiting with nothing to do that needed an internet connection. I resorted to playing games on my phone. About 20 minutes later, I heard a bang at my passenger side window. I jumped out of my skin. I couldn't see much of the person outside, as it was too dark and the headlights didn't light up the sides of the truck. I heard a man's voice begging for help, yelling at me to open the door because he was freezing. I heard him trying to open the locked door himself. I shined my flashlight toward the window, but it didn't help much. All I could see was someone in a really big black coat with the hood over his head. I yelled back, "What's wrong?" And the mysterious man replied that he was lost and stranded and needed to get out of the cold. I didn't trust this. I sat there nervously, trying to figure out what to ask him to prove he wasn't looking to harm me. But before I could say anything, he started aggressively trying to open the locked door and then started pounding on the glass even harder, still screaming for help. In the heat of the moment, I listened to my gut. I put the truck in drive. He realized what I was doing and started pounding harder on the window, trying to break it. I drove the truck onto the road and brought it up to 30 miles per hour, despite the damage I was surely doing to the overheating engine. But then I saw something that made me feel like my heart skipped a beat. As I came over the hill, I noticed the reflection of taillights approaching me on the side of the road. As I passed the parked car, I realized it was that same Toyota from earlier. The car was empty. I looked out the window for a second behind the car, and my taillights lit up footprints in the snow. That man who was banging on my window was him, and he was trying to trick me into opening the door to do who knows what. I kept driving, knowing full well I was messing up the engine, but I didn't care at that point. I pulled over a few minutes later when I saw headlights approaching on the other side. I wanted to cheer in excitement when I realized it was the tow truck. I flashed my lights, and he pulled to the side. As the driver got out, I told him what had just happened. He joked that he got there at the right time. He then asked if the guy had a gun or anything, but I told him I couldn't see. He replied, "Well, then we better do this quick." It took him about 15 minutes to get the truck attached. In that time, the Toyota never passed us. It was possible he had turned around and went the other way for this exact reason. I used the tow truck driver's phone to call John again and told him to just meet us at the body shop. To summarize the rest, John and I still went snowboarding that weekend, and the body shop replaced the broken water pump in my truck that was causing the overheating. I sold that truck a few weeks later. I'm glad I didn't lower my window or unlock the doors for that man trying to get into my car. In that setting, I could have been murdered, and no one would have ever known who had done it. Here's another story. I was 17 when I had my first girlfriend. At the time, I lived with my mom because my parents had gotten a divorce when I was 11. One day, I asked my girlfriend on a date, and she was into it. We both had jobs. I worked at a local grocery store, and she worked at Starbucks. We both worked the day shift and were also in our senior year of high school. The reason I asked her out on that particular day was that it was a Friday, and we barely had any homework. After work, I picked up my girlfriend from her house, and we went to a small restaurant 10 minutes from my house because that was all I could afford at the time. After we ate, we went back to her place to spend some time together. By then, it was dark out. She complained that our date night was short, so I explained that I couldn't afford to take her anywhere else. We came to an agreement that we would just go for a night drive. We drove through town and then onto a deserted road in the woods. Eventually, the pavement ended and we found ourselves on a dirt road. I suddenly had to pee really badly. I told my girlfriend and she had to go as well. We pulled over and got out of my car. For some reason, As soon as we stepped out, we smelled an awful, indescribable odor. I just wrote it off as someone else who also pulled over to do their business. My girlfriend actually gagged from the smell. I told her we would just pee real quick and get back into the car to head back to town. There was a little flat area that was the perfect spot to do our business. We did our thing and then headed back to the car. But on our way back, we heard a noise off to our left like a twig snapping. I was afraid it was an animal, so we rushed to my car. Before I even had a chance to open my car door, I heard a scream, either of fear or pain, coming from the direction where my girlfriend and I had just peed. I told my girlfriend to get in my car while I went to investigate. She begged me not to, but I did it anyway to make her feel safer. I locked the doors and went in the direction of the scream. I heard it again, but this time it was much closer, and I lost all my courage to investigate. However, it sounded like it came from the same direction where my girlfriend and I had heard the twig snap. Instead of going that way, I got my phone, turned the flash on, and took a picture. When the flash went off, I saw a man in a white shirt with black stripes standing there with some blue tarp right in front of him. He was just standing there. I didn't hesitate to dash back to the car. I unlocked the doors, got in, put it in drive, and floored it. My girlfriend kept asking me what happened. She could see that I was scared. I told her I would explain later. We got back to a less shady part of town, then drove back to her house. We went inside and into her room. That's when I told her I saw the man with the blue tarp in front of him just standing there. I showed her the picture, and she was just as freaked out as I was. She let me spend the night because we were both so creeped out, and since it was a Friday, we didn't have work or school the next day. That was, by far, the scariest moment of my life. We aren't in a relationship anymore. I'm 23 and she's 22, but we remain best friends. Another story. Friends, it was late summer of 2011. I was almost 19 and hanging out with my best friend, who was a few years younger than me. We live in a very rural area of southwestern Virginia, about 15 minutes from Mount Airy, North Carolina. Around here, pretty much everything closes by 10 p.m., so you have to find your own ways to pass the time. But that was never a problem for us, as we could always find a way to have fun. The night started out harmlessly enough. First, we went to the mall, then cruised the streets looking for girls, things any teen guys would do. When that proved unsuccessful, we just decided to go bowling until they closed. We then went to Main Street a little before midnight to walk some of the back alleys, acting like the edgy badasses we thought we were. But we never felt like we were in any danger, as there isn't much violent crime in the area. After we'd walked all the streets, we got bored with this and decided to grab a bite from Waffle House, as this was pretty much the only late-night dining option at the time. After we ate and made a quick stop at Walmart, we still weren't ready to go home, so we set out driving around some of the backcountry roads. This was nothing new to us. As I said, around here, you have to make your own fun, and late-night drives were always our thing. The stretch of road we were now on, I'd only driven maybe once before, during the day. Though it wasn't far from where either of us lived, we just had no reason to go down it. While still in Carolina, the road is paved, but within a mile, it enters back into Virginia and turns into dirt. Like most of the dirt roads around here, the county doesn't really give this one much attention since it's so far out of the way and there are very few houses on it. Since the road often washes out in heavy rains, you have to drive much slower. And being as unfamiliar with it as we were now traveling at a crawl. While we were both more cautious now, it still just seemed like any other road we would drive. Now, at this time of night, the roads are essentially empty around here, and with only a handful of houses on this road, we were certain we wouldn't run into any other traffic. The road is mainly all wooded and sits at the bottom of a small mountain. At night, it's easy to overlook any of the houses on it. We probably would have missed them all if not for, out of the corner of our eye, we noticed a light burning. We both looked and noticed a man standing under his porch light. We couldn't make out any features of the man, but we could tell he was watching us, standing completely motionless with the exception of his head following us. While we were both now on edge, we tried not to think much of it. We figured it was just someone stepping out for a cigarette, but it was just his demeanor that was so uncomforting to us. While nothing came from that man watching us, this was only the beginning. We gradually picked up our speed as we were becoming a little more unnerved the more we talked about it. Within just a few minutes, though, we came to the end of the road and were back on the hardtop road that I was much more familiar with and that I drove about once a week. We turned right and were feeling much better as we could pick up our speed and leave the thoughts of that man behind us. We enjoyed the sights from this road as it travels atop a small mountain ridge, offering beautiful views of the town below. After a couple of miles, we had reached the end of this road and made another right to make our way back to my house. This road is a little more wooded than the one we had just turned from, but I was even more familiar with this road as I've driven or ridden it literally thousands of times before. As we were making our way back toward the main highway, we saw something up ahead in the distant reaches of my headlights. Deer are horrendous around here, so we figured that's all it was and slowed down. We began to notice it was much whiter than the brown fur of a deer, but we're both used to seeing the occasional albino, so we still assumed that's all it was. As we got closer, we noticed it was no animal at all. It was definitely a human, but hunched over with their back to us. They were walking in the left lane against traffic, as one is supposed to. I looked back at my friend as he asked, "What the hell are they doing walking at this time of night?" I looked back toward the person and could finally make out the shape of an older-looking woman with long, scraggly gray hair wearing a white t-shirt and white pants. She still had her back turned to us until we were about 50 feet away from her. That's when she turned to us and we got the first look at her face. I don't want to say she was on meth or other drugs, but that's the look she gave off. Deep eye sockets with heavy dark bags under them, greasy hair, and very aged skin. Not sure how old she actually was, but if I had to guess, I'd say mid-40s to late 50s. But that wasn't the worst of it. She put her hands in the air and started waving them frantically and running towards us. When she did, we could see what looked like dried blood all over the front of her shirt and pants, as well as what looked like a big knife in one of her hands. We weren't sure what she wanted, but that desire to be edgy badasses was instantly erased. We floored it and didn't let off until we reached the highway. We were so terrified of the entire ordeal that what would have usually been a 5-minute quick drive to my house became a 35-minute detour just on the absurd thought that she could somehow follow us there. In small communities like this, you know pretty much everyone, but neither of us had ever seen this woman before, nor did we ever again. We kept a watch on local news for any stories about a bloody woman being picked up, but never heard a thing. I can't even begin to come up with an explanation why she would be walking the backcountry roads at almost 4 in the morning in her shape and condition, with blood on her clothes and a knife in her hand, with all the risks of human or animal altercation she faced. Fast forward to the present day. I now live with my wife on that peaceful road on the mountain ridge between the two roads of the incident. I take the latter one on an almost daily basis and still have seen no sign of that strange woman since. But just earlier this year, there was a huge drug and dogfighting ring busted down the road of the watching man. I don't know if it was the same house or if these people were even living in the area back then, but after all this happened, I've often wondered if that was the same house, and maybe that guy was keeping guard on the place. As for the woman, I just hope I never run into her again.